Verstappen makes a bold statement after being spotted with Toto. Mercedes makes a big statement regarding their engine development. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Have you ever read a rumor so wild it felt like the start of a movie? Well, that's exactly what happened recently in Formula One. A photo of Max Verstappen supposedly meeting with Toto Wolff on a yacht set the internet on fire. Fans were asking, was Verstappen plotting a shocking move to Mercedes? But what's the truth behind the headline? Let's dive in and break it all down. It all started when pictures appeared of Verstappen and Wolff on holiday in Sardinia. Instantly, social media exploded. Fans tracked private jets, analyzed yacht locations, and speculated about secret contract talks. The story had everything: mystery, rivalry, and the potential for one of the biggest driver transfers in modern F1 history. It didn't help that Red Bull was already dealing with turbulence in the background. With leadership drama fresh in everyone's minds, the idea of Verstappen jumping ship suddenly felt believable. But was it real? Or was it just noise? Max Verstappen didn't exactly rush to clear things up. At the Hungarian Grand Prix, reporters pressed him for answers, and his response? Pure dismissal. "I was swimming in the ocean," he joked when asked about the yacht photos. He called the chatter a waste of time and refused to fuel the fire. In one line, Verstappen revealed the psychological trick that many top athletes use: don't feed the rumor. By making light of it, he took the power out of the speculation. Still, his silence created a vacuum, and in F1, silence is often louder than words. On the other side, Toto Wolff wasn't shy about addressing the situation either. He brushed it off with humor, mocking the way fans were creating photo collages with planes and yachts. According to him, the whole thing was nothing more than coincidence. Two people holidaying in the same place at the same time. Wolff also made a point to remind everyone that Mercedes' priorities for the future are George Russell and young star Kimi Antonelli. Whether you believe him or not, it was a clever way to redirect the conversation back toward his own team. But of course, speculation didn't stop there. Former drivers and pundits weighed in, some suggesting that if a meeting had taken place, it could have been about a deal years in the making. Others believed the rumors were being blown out of proportion, possibly as a way to unsettle Red Bull during a period of instability. And then there was the uncertainty around George Russell's future. With his contract situation still not fully secure, the Verstappen to Mercedes chatter gained even more traction. After all, where there's uncertainty, there's opportunity for speculation to thrive. Finally, at the Hungarian Grand Prix, Verstappen decided to close the book on the whole saga. When asked directly about his future, he confirmed he's staying with Red Bull, not just for next season, but into the 2026 regulation changes and beyond. He explained that his ongoing talks with Red Bull about next year's car prove his commitment. "When you're not interested in staying," he said, "you stop talking about these things." That was his way of saying, if I were leaving, I wouldn't be this involved. Just like that, the rumors were done. The wild stories about yachts and secret deals faded into the background, replaced by a simple truth: Max Verstappen isn't going anywhere. But let's zoom out for a moment. Why did this rumor capture so much attention? The answer is psychology. First, it played on the drama of betrayal. A world champion leaving the team that made him a superstar? That's the stuff of Hollywood scripts. Second, it tapped into power dynamics. Red Bull's leadership had been shaken, and people loved to imagine rivals seizing the opportunity to strike. And third, it showed the clash between image and reality. A simple photo on holiday became the spark for weeks of speculation, proving how quickly narratives can form in the digital age. What's fascinating is how both Verstappen and Wolff handled it. They didn't panic, they didn't lash out, and they didn't fuel the story. Instead, they used humor, deflection, and patience. They allowed the story to spin itself out, then shut it down with clarity when the time was right. This is a classic strategy in public psychology. Control the narrative by refusing to feed it. Once you laugh off a rumor, it loses its sting. And when you finally give a definitive answer, people move on. So here's the bottom line. Max Verstappen isn't joining Mercedes. He's staying loyal to Red Bull, working on the future and brushing aside distractions. The yacht story? Just noise in the background. But this whole saga reveals something important about Formula One today. It's not just about lap times or strategy. It's about perception, image, and the stories people tell off the track. And sometimes, those stories can be just as powerful as what happens on race day. And that's the real takeaway. In Formula One, rumors move faster than cars. They stir emotions, ignite debates, and make us all wonder, what if? But when the dust settles, only one thing matters: what the drivers themselves decide to say. For Verstappen, the answer is clear. His future is with Red Bull. The rest? Just background noise. So the next time you see a photo go viral or hear whispers of a secret meeting, remember this story. Sometimes it's just coincidence. And sometimes it's a reminder that in F1, the biggest races aren't always on the track. They're in the stories we tell ourselves. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe. There are plenty more inside looks at the world of Formula One coming your way. Imagine this. You're Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, the man who redefined Formula One dominance. After more than a decade at Mercedes, you finally make the biggest move of your career. You put on the legendary Ferrari Red, stepping into the most iconic team in motorsport history. It should be a fairy tale. But then, almost immediately, whispers start to spread. According to Ferrari legend Arturo Merzario, 90% of Ferrari didn't even want you there. Today, we're diving into the truth behind that shocking claim, Hamilton's rocky start at Ferrari, and what this all means for the most decorated driver of his generation. Before we get into it, here's the big question to keep in mind. Can a driver like Lewis Hamilton overcome not only the competition on the track, but also the doubts from inside his own team? Stick with me, because the answer might surprise you. Let's start with the move itself. When Hamilton announced he was leaving Mercedes for Ferrari, the world of Formula One exploded. For fans, it was a seismic moment. The king of modern F1 joining the most historic team of all time. On paper, it sounded perfect. The prestige of Ferrari matched with the talent of Hamilton seemed like a guaranteed recipe for glory. But inside the walls of Maranello, not everyone was celebrating. Arturo Merzario, a former Ferrari driver from the 70s, dropped a bombshell in a recent interview. He claimed that 90% of Ferrari didn't want Hamilton. In his view, the decision was pushed more by commercial and marketing interests than pure racing needs. Ferrari, after all, is not just a racing team. It's a global brand. And putting Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari suit sells headlines, merchandise, and dreams. Now, think about that for a moment. You walk into a new job where 9 out of 10 colleagues secretly wish you weren't there. No matter how strong your resume, that creates tension, isolation, and pressure. Psychologists call this social rejection, and it has a powerful impact on performance. It can make even the most confident second-guess themselves. And in Hamilton's case, we may already be seeing the effects. So far, his Ferrari journey hasn't exactly gone to plan. No podiums yet. At the Hungarian Grand Prix, after a particularly poor qualifying session, Hamilton was brutally honest with himself. He called his performance useless. Imagine the weight behind those words. For someone who's used to winning everything, struggling to even fight for the top 3 is a harsh reality. And this is where the psychology of expectation comes into play. Ferrari expected a hero, a superstar who would bring instant results. Hamilton expected a rebirth, a chance to prove he could win outside Mercedes. When those expectations clash with a tough reality, frustration builds quickly. We've all felt this in our own lives, starting a new chapter with high hopes, only to hit walls that make us question everything. But here's where things get interesting. Merzario didn't just criticize the move. He also left the door open to something bigger. He said the story isn't finished yet. In his eyes, Hamilton is waiting for the right motivation, the right spark to unleash his full potential again. And that spark could still come at Ferrari. Let's pause on that for a second, because this is where the narrative shifts from doubt to possibility. Hamilton is not just another driver. He's someone who thrives when the odds are stacked against him. Remember 2008? A last corner overtake in Brazil to win his first championship. Remember 2020? Winning races in the rain with half the grid spinning off. His career is full of moments where he proved people wrong. And that's why this Ferrari chapter is so fascinating. It's not just about lap times or pit stops, it's about legacy. For Hamilton, winning with Ferrari wouldn't just be another trophy, it would be the ultimate statement. That he could conquer not only Mercedes' dominance, but also the internal politics, the pressure, and yes, even the doubts of 90% of his new team. Here's another angle worth considering. From Ferrari's perspective, maybe the skepticism is natural. Charles Leclerc is already their golden boy, young, fast, and committed long-term. Bringing in Hamilton could feel like an outsider disrupting that dynamic. Some engineers and staff may fear shifting resources away from their existing star. Others may simply doubt whether Hamilton at this stage of his career can still deliver at the very top. But psychology also teaches us something else. Doubt can be fuel. For some people, rejection crushes their spirit. For others, it ignites a fire. If Hamilton channels this negativity into determination, we might see a version of him that's hungrier than ever before. Think about Michael Schumacher. When he joined Ferrari in the 90s, it wasn't the winning machine we remember today. It was chaotic, political, and full of setbacks. But Schumacher turned that environment into his greatest triumph, dragging Ferrari back to dominance. What if Hamilton could do something similar? Now, let's bring this back to the fan perspective. When you watch Hamilton in red, you're not just watching another driver switch teams. You're watching history unfold. Will it be a disaster that confirms the critics were right? Or will it be a redemption story where Hamilton silences 90% of doubters and proves himself all over again? That tension, that uncertainty is exactly why this story is so captivating. Arturo Merzario's claim may sound dramatic. 90% against Hamilton is a big number, but whether it's literally true or not doesn't even matter as much as the perception it creates. Because in sports, perception shapes narrative, and narrative shapes pressure. And right now, Hamilton is living under one of the heaviest spotlights of his entire career. So here's the takeaway. Hamilton's move to Ferrari is bigger than just racing. It's about psychology, legacy, and human resilience. It's about whether one man can walk into a room full of doubters and still bend the story to his will. That's why every lap he drives this season carries extra weight. And that's why, love him or hate him, you can't take your eyes off this story. Because if Hamilton does succeed at Ferrari, it won't just be another victory. It will be one of the greatest comebacks in Formula One history. And now I want to hear from you. Do you think Hamilton made the right move going to Ferrari? Or was it a mistake from the very beginning? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's see how divided the fans really are. What if I told you that Mercedes, one of the most dominant teams in Formula One history, is facing a decision that could define its entire future? A decision centered around George Russell, the young driver many once believed would carry the Silver Arrows into a new golden era. But now, as we edge closer to 2026, the question isn't whether Russell can lead Mercedes, it's whether Mercedes even wants him to. Let's unpack this, because it's bigger than just one driver. It's about reputation, ambition, and survival in a sport that punishes hesitation. Stick with me until the end, because the real twist isn't about Russell himself. It's about what this choice reveals about Mercedes as a team. To understand the weight of this decision, we have to rewind a little. When George Russell first stepped into Formula One, he was hailed as the future of British motorsport. Calm under pressure, blisteringly quick in qualifying, and fiercely determined, he was seen as the natural heir to Lewis Hamilton's throne at Mercedes. And when he finally joined the team in 2022, fans expected fireworks. This was supposed to be the passing of the torch, the moment when Mercedes transitioned seamlessly from one superstar to the next. But fast forward to today, and the reality is far more complicated. Russell has shown flashes of brilliance, like his stunning maiden victory in Brazil back in 2022. He's had weekends where he looked unstoppable, yet those highs have been matched by frustrating lows, costly mistakes, inconsistent performances, and moments where he struggled to assert himself as the clear team leader. And here's the thing. In Formula One, perception matters almost as much as performance. Russell isn't just racing against the stopwatch, he's racing against expectations. And the higher those expectations were at the start, the harsher the judgment feels now. This is where psychology kicks in. Human beings are wired to compare reality against what they expected to happen. If you expect a driver to be average and he overperforms, you're impressed. But if you expect a driver to be the next Hamilton and he falls short, disappointment grows. That's the trap Russell finds himself in, and Mercedes is right in the middle of it. Now let's zoom in on Mercedes. This is a team that built its legacy on dominance. From 2014 to 2020, they were untouchable. 8 straight constructors' titles, 6 drivers' championships for Hamilton. They were the gold standard. But in the last few seasons, that aura of invincibility has faded. Red Bull has taken over, McLaren and Ferrari are catching up, and Mercedes, they're searching for answers. This makes the Russell question even more urgent, because for Mercedes, 2026 isn't just another season, it's the start of a new era. That's when Formula One's next major regulation changes kick in, with brand new engines and car designs that could completely reset the competitive order. Every team is quietly building toward that year, planning which drivers will lead them into a potentially revolutionary chapter. So here's the million-dollar question. Is George Russell the right man to lead Mercedes into 2026? Or do they need to look elsewhere before it's too late? On one hand, sticking with Russell makes sense. He's young, talented, and deeply integrated into the team. He knows the Mercedes culture, he understands their systems, and he's shown loyalty through tough seasons. Abandoning him now could be a huge gamble, especially when stability matters in a time of transition. But on the other hand, the numbers don't lie. Russell's results haven't matched the hype. He's often outshone by his teammates, and he's struggled to deliver the kind of consistency Mercedes needs to fight for championships again. Formula One is ruthless. If a driver isn't bringing the team forward, then by definition, they're holding the team back. And here's where Mercedes faces a brutal truth. The driver market is heating up. Young stars like Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, and even established champions like Max Verstappen are reshaping the hierarchy. If Mercedes hesitates on Russell, they could miss their chance to sign a true game changer for the future. And once those opportunities pass, they rarely come back. Now, let's pause for a moment. Imagine you're Toto Wolff, the man who has to make this call. You're balancing the loyalty you feel toward Russell, just the investment Mercedes has already made in him, and the reality that fans, sponsors, and the media are watching your every move. Do you double down on Russell and trust that he'll mature into the leader you once believed he'd be? Or do you cut ties and bring in someone new, knowing that the backlash could be immediate, but the long-term rewards potentially greater? This is what psychologists call a sunk cost dilemma. When you've already invested heavily in something or someone, you feel an emotional pull to stick with it, even if the evidence suggests moving on might be wiser. Mercedes is deep in that trap right now, and the longer they wait, the harder the decision becomes. But let's flip the perspective for a moment. What about George Russell himself? For him, this isn't just about keeping a seat. It's about proving he belongs among the elite. Every race, every lap, every wheel-to-wheel battle is a test of his reputation. If he doesn't rise to the challenge soon, he risks being remembered not as the future champion he was promised to be, but as the guy who almost made it. This is the drama of Formula One in its purest form. Careers can pivot on the smallest margins. A single mistake, a single bold overtake, or a single unlucky strategy call can change the narrative forever. And Russell knows it. That's why 2025 may be the most important season of his life. It's not just about points or podiums, it's about survival. So where does this leave us? The truth is, Mercedes stands at a crossroads. Keep Russell, and they're betting on potential. Replace him, and they're betting on change. Neither path is risk-free, but both will define how Mercedes enters the 2026 era. If they get it wrong, they could spend years in the shadow of Red Bull and Ferrari. If they get it right, they could reclaim their throne. And here's the kicker. History tells us that big teams often have to make cold, ruthless calls to stay on top. Ferrari did it with drivers in the past. Red Bull has built its empire on bold decisions. If Mercedes wants to return to dominance, they may have to be just as ruthless, even if it means parting ways with a driver who once symbolized their future. So what's going to happen? Will Mercedes stick with Russell and hope he finally delivers on his promise? Or will they make the bold call to bring in fresh blood before the 2026 reset? Whatever they decide, one thing is certain. This isn't just about one driver. It's about the future of Mercedes, the balance of power in Formula One, and the storylines that will define the next decade of the sport. Because in Formula One, the biggest battles aren't always fought on the track. Sometimes they're fought in the boardrooms, in the contract negotiations, and in the quiet moments where a team must decide who they truly believe in.